I like to begin this show the same way I begin all shows, by giving all praise due to the Lord, the sovereign Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, in the name of Jesus Christ. It's through him that I am being sent with this truth as a chance for redemption for all. And this truth is about to get really truthful. Today, we're going to speak about the I.R.S., the banking cartels, the Federal Reserve. Yesterday, our show was kind of broke up due to technical difficulties. But if you remember correctly, we began the show by reading Deuteronomy chapter 28. And what we were attempting to explain is how we found ourselves under the curse of the Lord for disobedience in not following his law. Well, today we're going to get a little bit into this I.R.S. So let's get straight to this reading. Things are going to seem to get a little complicated right now, but if possible, I am attempting to make it as easy to understand as I can. So, the I.R.S. Get the screen together. Not that one right there, that's for sure. Bear with me. All right, we're going to begin by reading a little bit into this 16th Amendment. Passed by Congress on July 2nd, 1909, and ratified February 3rd, 1913, the 16th Amendment established Congress' right to impose a federal income tax. During these times, taxes or tithes, as it is biblically referred to, were to be paid to the indigenous landowners, the Afro-Americans, the people who truly owned this land and allowed these foreigners an opportunity to be free from the tyranny of their land. But due to legal trickery with things such as the Income Tax Act, the Federal Income Act, the Banking Act, all which were ratified in 1913, they begin to rob God. They begin to rob the temple. And that's what we're trying to point out here. How these foreigners robbed the Afro-Americans of everything that God had rightfully bestowed upon them. But all of this only occurred because us as the Afro-Americans did not follow the laws and regulations strictly given to us by the Father. Far-reaching in its social as well as its economic impact, the Income Tax Act Amendment became part of the Constitution, part of the theft, a contract of theft, by a curious series of events accumulating in a bit of political maneuvering, manipulation that went awry. The financial requirements of the Civil War prompted the first American income tax in 1861. Pay that no mind. This is when they began to plot this sinister act. They did not ratify it until 1913, but as with any plan, it took a little time. At first, Congress placed a flat 3% tax on all income over $800, and later modified this principle to include a graduated tax. Congress repealed the Income Tax Act, in 1872, but the concept did not disappear. So they attempted to prevent these bankers from taking over the land and introducing this new form of fiat. We'll go a little bit more in depth into the fiat concept later, but just know that before fiat, this was a gold metal-based society where they had actual commodities to back up the money. when they introduced this new fiat system, rather than gold and silver, the money was backed by the souls of the Afro-American people, backed by the souls of the children of God. At first, Congress placed, after the Civil War, the growing industrial and financial markets of eastern United States generally prospered, but the farmers of the South and Southwest suffered from low prices for their farm products, while they were forced to pay high prices for manufactured goods. Throughout the 1860s, 70s, and 80s, farmers formed such political organizations as the Grange, the Greenback Party, the National Farmers Alliance, and the People's Populist Party. Now, we spoke about this Populist Party. In the beginning of its formation, it was a group of Afro-Americans attempting to keep control over their land, their property, and their resources. However, due to fusionist infiltration, eventually they was taken over and just became just another wing of the Democratic demonic plot. All these groups advocated many reforms considered radical for the time, including a graduated income tax. In 1894, as part of a high tariff bill, Congress enacted a 2% tax on income over $4,000. The tax was almost immediately struck down by a 5-4 decision of the Supreme Court, even though the court had upheld the constitutionality of the Civil War tax as recently as 1881. Although farm organizations denounced the court's decision as a prime example of the alliance of government and business against farmers. So what we're seeing here is the beginning steps in introducing corporations, aka central banking organizations, into the fold. A general return of prosperity around the turn of the century softens the demand for reform. Democratic Party platforms under the leadership of 3-time presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan. We spoke about him earlier. He's the guy that convinced the American public that it was better to back money using the fiat plan rather than the actual gold and silver resources, which the Afro-Americans at that point had plenty of. The whole point was to keep the gold and focus everybody's attention on something that was fake, imaginary, monopoly money, if you will. However, consistently included an income tax plank, and the progressive wing of the Republican Party also espoused the concept. In 1909, progressives in Congress again attached a provision for an income tax to a tariff bill. Conservatives, hoping to kill the ideal for good, proposed a constitutional amendment enacting such a tax. They believe an amendment would never receive ratification by 3/4 of the states. Much to their surprise, the amendment was ratified by one state legislature after another. And on February 25th, 1913, with the certification by Secretary of State Philip Philander C. Knox, I wonder is he connected with Fort Knox, the 16th Amendment took effect. Yet, in 1913, due to generous exemptions and deductions, less than 1% of the population paid income tax at the rate of only 1% of net income. This document settled the constitutional question of how to income tax, and by doing so, affected dramatic changes in the American life. All right, let's read a little bit into this 16th Amendment, and we'll get out of here. 61st Congress of the United States of America at the first session, begun and held at the city of Washington on Monday, the 15th day of March, 1909. Joint resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution of the United States. You see this word Constitution? Think about theft, a legalese contract of theft, resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress, assembled 2/3 of each house concurring therein, that the following article is proposed as an amendment to the contract of theft of the United States, which, when ratified by the legislature of 3/4 of the several states, shall be valid to all intent and purposes as a part of the Constitution. Recently, I purchased an 1828 Webster Dictionary to help me translate this legalese. If anybody really want to get to the bottom of this, I'd advise you do the same. Now here we go. Article 16. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment, among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. So basically, we have the right to come collect what we feel the people owe, no matter how they feel. Now, once we agreed and signed up for things like Social Security cards, received birth certificates, signed up with the Department of Health, that was our signature saying we agreed to these articles. And that was also a major step in our downfall, our fall from grace. But more to come later. Until then, Focus Daily, y'all.